Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins. Welcome to our program and welcome to Citybiz List. And today we continue with another interview in our series sponsored by the Bridge Alliance entitled Fixing America's Broken Democracy. So I think we all agree we have a little bit of work to do in that area. And our guest today is working on that as well. And he is Stephen Perkins, Vice President for Grassroots Engagement of the American Conservation Coalition, otherwise known as the ACC. Stephen, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, Stephen, your title, VP Grassroots Engagement, American Conservation Coalition, a little bit of a mouthful. Why don't you, in layman's terms, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what the ACC is all about and trying to accomplish?
Sure. So in the simplest terms, ACC is a group of young, mostly right of center people who care about the environment and also want to do something about it. And so we were started about 4 years ago by Benji Backer, our president, out of this need within the conservative space for voices on climate and other environmental issues. And since then, we've grown incredibly in terms of our staff and operations and our grassroots involvement and presence. And now, we're in more than 100 communities around the country. Our members directly participate in their local environments and do activism and also help us with national advocacy whenever those opportunities came up. My role as the Vice President of Grassroots is really to oversee those field and grassroots operations and to help our branches and our members connect to their local environments, get people to join our movement and pursue these ideas that we advocate for.
So, Stephen, would you say you're more of an organization striving for political action or educational in nature? Just give us a few more specifics, if you don't mind.
Yeah, all of the above. So the biggest thing is educating both our members as well as others who we work with about why there is a need for climate action, why young conservatives need to be involved in that. But then the other part is what you talked about, their political action. We have to show members of Congress that we are interested in action on this, that we want to see their own leadership on these issues. And so really at our local level, it's about education and doing some of the in-person conservation work to help improve our local environments and our local communities. And then on the more national level, we hope to get members involved with national advocacy to where they can really take our message to their elected officials and affect change at the federal, state, and local government level.
It seems to me, Stephen, it's so odd that the issue of climate change has been so politicized, I would say, the way it has. In some ways, not unlike the more recent issue, maybe of mask wearing or other issues, related to COVID. So explain to our viewers, from the conservative perspective, your views on climate change and what exactly you're trying to accomplish in, I think, helping to make this either a nonpartisan or a bipartisan solution to this challenge we all face.
Yeah, to answer that, I really think of where we started and where we are today and the incredible progress that's just happened within the Republican Party and the conservative movement about climate. When we started 4 years ago, but you can even go back to when Al Gore first started talking about climate change on a national level, right? Conservatives were very wary to get into that debate. And many times it did become this big polarizing issue and they would refuse to engage on it. And I think that was largely because conservatives looked around and they saw that the only leading voices on the issue were voices from the left. And so they felt as though they couldn't really engage in that because A, we didn't really know what the response should be, but B, it felt a bit alienating because moments where we would try to engage, there would be a lot of pushback. Now, today, not only do conservatives openly talk about climate, but now the third largest caucus in the U.S. House is the Conservative Climate Caucus. It's a number of conservative lawmakers who have those conservative values, but are openly talking about climate change and environmental issues and energy and how they can play a role in that. Not only that, but Leader McCarthy now has a climate plan as part of the House GOP agenda. And so these are huge strides that have happened over the past half decade to a decade. And we're incredibly, encouraged by that. I think there's still a lot of work to do to engage people. There's still a lot of portions of, the conservative movement that are, again, hesitant to engage here. But it's so important that we do. And it's important that this becomes really an issue about us collectively as Americans. How do we protect America's environment rather than left America versus right America, red America versus blue America?
Yeah, Stephen, I'm so glad to hear you, say that, because it seems, there's no question. I mean, maybe it's a debatable thing. I'm not sure, but there's no question we are in the midst of climate change. The debate ought to be about, how and why and what to do about it, as opposed to whether or not it's really occurring. So kudos to, you and your colleagues and others who are encouraging that debate for the benefit of all of us. So tell us a little bit about kind of how the ACC, you have branches all over the country, and so what would make for victory here from the perspective of your organization?
That's a great question. A lot of the things that we started out 4 years ago as thinking would be victory points have happened, which is really awesome to see. I mean, again, the climate caucus that I would talk about, some of the recent legislation and the fact that Republicans are talking about climate change, those are victories to us. But now moving forward here, what we really see as imperative is local action. And what that means is that we want people know that climate change is affecting not only the world and our nation, but their local communities. We talk to people in South Carolina and Florida who see the sea level rising, and that's affecting their coastal communities. We see people in the Midwest who are having similar challenges, not with water rise, but with their own issues. And so it looks a little differently across the country. For us, a measure of success here is now, how do we get people out in their local communities to do something about it and to help conserve their own environment? So the biggest things that looks like in practice, number one, we host a number of cleanups every week, every month around our branches. And you think about something as simple as cleaning up a park. It doesn't really move the needle that much on climate change, but it does show that we care about our local environments. We want to help conserve them and clean them up. And it also shows that we want to take action. We don't want to just have activism. We want action over activism. And so another thing for us is to have this become a top issue for voting Republicans in upcoming elections. And I think in the 24 election, we're really going to start seeing the presidential ticket have to engage on this issue because it is such one of national importance. And so, encouraged by what's been happening, but there's still a lot of work to be done, because while America is leading in the fight against climate change, there's still, global numbers that we have to combat. And right here at home, there's still a lot of things that we need to put innovation and industry in the driver's seat to solve.
I'm so, delighted to hear that. I consider myself kind of a middle of the road person politically. But I would say that deniability doesn't seem to me to be a kind of a winning position on the issue of climate change.
Yeah. And when we talk to members of Congress, when we talk to people who are running as candidates, we're frank with them and we tell them, look, you personally can debate climate change and debate whether humans have involvement. Younger voters are not here for that debate. They're here for solutions, and they're here to listen to how you want to tackle the issue. So if you're having the debate about whether it's real or whether humans cause it, you've lost that debate. I hate to say it. We now have to talk about how we move forward. And really, it comes down to this choice. The reason why we as young conservatives are so engaged in this conversation is because it's our future. And we have a choice between, a future where the government's in the driver's seat, and with that comes a lot of regulation and bureaucracy, or do we allow people, innovation, technology, in the market to drive us to a cleaner, greener future? And I think the latter is what we really need to fight for and what we need to be focused on, because at the end of the day, that's the only path that is going to work.
Yeah, again, Stephen, I have to, agree and send kudos to you in terms of your role in this, because I would again certainly agree that if we're just debating, climate change caused by man or nature, that's something, number one, we're not likely to ever find out anytime soon. But it is somewhat clear we better figure out what to do with it, how we can impact it, how we can live better lives, and so forth. So in that regard, Stephen, is your organization also involved in other, of course, you mentioned, cleaning up neighborhoods and what have you, but are you involved in other environmental issues beyond climate change?
Absolutely. Yeah. Really anything that falls under the climate environmental conservation bucket, we are involved there. Clean energy is another one. We have a lot of discussions around the country about the future of American energy, but I'll point to some recent examples. Our members were influential in getting two pretty major pieces of legislation passed. The first, which just celebrated its 1-year anniversary, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, is the Great American Outdoors Act, which not only helped with conservation efforts, but was a huge boost of support for our national parks. And because of it, I got to see this when I was out in Wyoming a couple of weeks ago. National parks are getting so many people that are visiting those now. And you've really seen this boom, especially in the past year with COVID, people wanting to be outside. So we were so happy to play a part in getting that important legislation passed. And then the other one was the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, which our members also helped push. And, so that's sort of wildlife rehabilitation and conservation. But absolutely, any of those issues, any of those kind of major categories, we certainly do work under.
So, Stephen, as the head of the move, I guess, to get people involved in this effort from a grassroots perspective, what kind of activities are you engaged in to encourage, the average young person to care more about conservation and to become involved?
The biggest thing is getting people involved at the branch level and getting them plugged into opportunities to help in their local community. And so, as I mentioned, we have branches in over 100 plus communities around the country, and people can go to our website and view the map of where those are. But typically our members will come and, they'll come to a cleanup or they'll come to a hike. And from there, we can really expand their participation to a whole host of things, whether that's touring energy facilities, touring other kind of facilities, hiking a national park with a park ranger, engaging with their member of Congress in a legislative meeting. So there's a lot of ways that people can get involved, sort of low involvement, but also if they want to accelerate it from there, the sky is the limit on that. And then also some exciting things we have coming up. We have a number of events now that events are happening more and more. We're planning a student summit for this January where our students, are mainly student members, will come to Washington, D.C. and spend a weekend learning how to become better activists and how to become better local conservationists so that they can take that back to their branches and really grow our presence from there. And,
it so seems like it's a little bit, maybe you call it like Back to the Future or something that, we used to in this country, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and the like, we would generally agree that such and such was an issue, and then we can debate how to fix the issue. Climate change somehow, again, until recently, and your organization has helped with this for sure, climate change somehow became an issue of, it exists or it doesn't exist, or there's something we can do about it, or there's nothing we can.
Right. And again, I would go back to certainly the science isn't settled because science is always evolving and we're always learning new things, especially about climate. But you go back to the late 19th century, and there were studies and articles talking about how human, mostly energy production and consumption, were leading to changes in the environment. Young people know this. We're not interested in a debate on whether it's the contributions of man, or whether it's happening in general. We just want to do something about it, because at the end of the day, it's our future. And I think for young conservatives, we think it's our prosperity on the line. If we're going to have a prosperous country, one that can support jobs and support economic development, and ultimately allow us to access the American dream, or whatever personal dream that we have to have a climate. And there's a thin line there between sort of being an alarmist on the issue and being a realist on the issue. We are realists in the sense that we know there's an issue. We know we have more than 5 years before the world ends, right? So we're not quite on that side of it, but we do know that we need to take action today, because look, taking action and not kicking the can down the road, that should be a conservative value, and that should be something that an American value. That's something that we all should be able to get behind and say, for future generations, we've got to take action now, and we can have this partisan bickering happen, or we can unite around the things that we do agree on, and push a way forward. So that's what we're focused on.
That's great. And Stephen, I suspect a number of our viewers will agree. And assuming they do, how can they become more active or involved with the American Conservation Coalition? And do they need to be a conservative, or are you looking for anybody and everybody to help you out?
That's a good question. Anybody and everybody is certainly welcome. And really, we say that we're conservative, but at the end of the day, what we really mean by that is that we believe in the power of markets. We believe in market-based solutions. And I've talked to a number of people who would consider themselves liberals or progressive, and they say, look, I'm right there with you on that. And so we encourage everybody to get involved in something like joining us for a cleanup or a hike. There's no political ideology, right, that goes along with that. So I would encourage people to go to acc.eco.eco. That's our website. They can either start a branch if there isn't one in their area, or they can join a branch and join one of the dozens of cleanups and hikes and other activities that we have happening just over this next month. We have an exciting new campaign launching this fall that I would love for people to get involved with. And then, of course, follow us on social media and learn more about the different resources and perspectives that we push out.
So, Stephen, just before we part, just mention your upcoming campaign this fall. Tell us for a few seconds about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so this fall, and we're speaking a little early right now because it's going to launch later this week, but we have a natural climate solutions campaign called Rooted in America that we are launching this fall. And it revolves around this very simple idea of what are the things we can do to tackle climate change that are so easy and really rooted in nature, right? So something like planting a tree, which we all know, planting a tree is great because it adds to the beauty of a community, helps produce more oxygen. It's a great carbon capture tool as well. So the more trees we plant, the more carbon we're going to pull out of the atmosphere. That's just one example of a very practical way that natural climate solutions can be used. In this campaign that we're launching this fall, Rooted in America, is going to educate people about that and then also get them out in their communities. We're going to be planting hundreds of trees this fall through next spring. And so would love for people to join us for a tree planting as well.
Well, we hope that they do, Stephen, and thank you for joining us. So we would encourage our viewers, if they're so inclined, to reach out to the American Conservation Coalition, as Stephen said. And Stephen, thank you for your message. Thank you for joining us today. And this is David Nevins on behalf of Citybiz List and on behalf of the Bridge Alliance and our continuing series on fixing America's broken democracy. We've been talking with Stephen Perkins. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.